Tell us the general area in which you live, how long you've lived in Fort Worth, and a bit about your background.
Thanks for coming tonight. My name is Chris Jamison, born and raised in the Louisville Flower Mound area, graduated from Louisville High School, went on to the University of North Texas where I studied entrepreneurship and strategic management, continuing my education as I worked towards my entrepreneurial master's at MIT. I moved to Fort Worth in 2008 when I met my wife, Amber. We'll celebrate 17 years marriage in June. We have an incredible 14-year daughter named Emma. She turns 14 in June. I have spent the last 9 years as the president of my HOA. I am also very involved in EO Fort Worth, which is Entrepreneurs Organization. During that time, I spent about 5 years on the board. I also held a regional role for 2 years on this global organization. When I Manny Ramirez had approached me when Alan Blaylock decided that he was going to vacate the seat and asked me if I was interested in running for District 10. I initially said no, but then I thought about it and I realized that my business experience would be an asset. My businesses take me all over. I've spent the last 30 years in business. During that time, I have started, built, bought, and sold about a dozen companies. And in my time traveling around the Metroplex, I've realized that a lot has happened over the last 4 or 5 years, and I don't like it. A lot's happened in Dallas, a lot of poor decisions, a lot of fiscal irresponsibility, a lack of planning has made Dallas just another big city. And I didn't want that to happen to Fort Worth. So I decided that I wanted to get involved. Fort Worth is Fort Worth, and we need to keep it that way. People move here because it has a sense of community. District 10 has some great schools, and the identity of this area is very important. We need to protect it. I decided that in making the decision to get involved, I went and I met with the decision makers in Fort Worth, and I met with Maddie Parker, I met with Dee Kelly, Manny Ramirez, Michael Crane, Alan Blaylock, Hillwood, Travis Clegg, former Mayor Mike Moncrief. And during those meetings, I realized that I needed to run, and I knew that I had their support. I've been fortunate to have their endorsements. On Friday, I received the endorsement for the Professional Firefighters 440 in Fort Worth, and today I got the endorsement from the Police Officers Association. Very proud of that. It brings me to the reason that I decided to run. I think that this area suffers from lack of planning. You have neighborhoods that were built, communities that were built, and 10 years later they decided they needed to build a road. And that can't happen. We need to be planning that infrastructure growth and those roads the same time the communities are being designed and the same time they're being built. We have a lot of work to do to fix east to west, and we're going to do it. The second thing is, we need to focus on fiscal responsibility. I think there's a lot of money that's spent in this city that doesn't need to be spent. We need to be spending more of our resources on the core structure and building the foundation of this city. Growth is coming. We need to be smarter about how we embrace that. And finally, city services. We need to be able to support the first responders, provide the facilities, the resources, the equipment they need to be able to do their job, because they protect this city every single day. That's why I decided to run.
Hello to everyone that's here this evening, and for everyone that's going to be watching this later on, thank you for taking the time to get to know your candidates more before you make the vote. An informed voter is a great voter, so thank you for taking that seriously. My name is Alicia Ortiz, for some of you who I have not had the pleasure of meeting yet. I am a resident of North Fort Worth and have been for the last 25 years. I am a wife of nearly 30 years. My husband's here with me today, and I am a mother of 4. One of them is here as well today. That we raised here in Fort Worth. We have been rooted in the community, from sports to activities to organizations. I have been committed to this community for the last 20 plus years. I have been on different councils and committees, from the hospital to the Blue Zones Advisory Committee to the Texas Health Advisory Committee to CEIC, Keller Ambassador Program, to smaller functions within Trinity Habitat, just a dozen million different ways of volunteering hours over 20 years. As you can imagine, there's a long list. And I have done so because the community is truly important to me. I have seen it grow, I have seen it evolve, and I have been part of that development changes as we have grown. When opportunities came to our community that were deviating the comprehensive plan, I stepped up to make sure that that didn't take place, that would incur some negative impact to our community. But it wasn't just about a NIMBY mentality, it was about finding a solution that could work for both from the city perspective and from the business owner that was trying to provide dollars to our tax base. So I provided a solution. If you're familiar, how many of you have been in the area for at least 15 years? Okay, so you're probably familiar with the Heritage and Beach Corridor. That northeast corner was going to be a gas station and an automotive adjacent to exterior tire sales. And if you look at it now, that's not what you have there. And that was because that was going to go through a zoning process change that was going to deviate from our comprehensive plan. And I stood up and I said, how can we make this where it doesn't impact our community? We still have a tax base that comes in, but that is more fruitful than what we were having put before us. So I went to council and I worked with the developer, worked with the business owner, worked with city leaders, and achieved what we have today. On the south side, you don't see a large 25-foot Walmart sign. We see a small monument sign. That was because I championed also for a monument unified sign agreement throughout the city of Fort Worth. That's the action that I've taken over many years because it matters to me. It wasn't just a recent decision, it was many years of volunteering, hours of time, because this community of the North is vitally important. It is growing. It's growing very fast. And we need people who understand where it's been, where it's gone, and where it can go. And that's why I'm decided to run, to be in the position to lead District 10 in a manner that I understand it from a historical standpoint, and also from the standpoint of having voted for measures for road structure, infrastructure, for bond dollars, for CCPD, for Police North Division to be built. I was there through all of that. I brought those through to the finish line. Those were measures that were volunteer hours to make sure that those were critical. And that's what we have today, because I understood the community's needs and I could see the vision of the future. And so that's what I'm here today to be able to do, because I know I'm the right candidate for this position.
This next question is going to overlap a little bit. What do you believe to be the top 3 issues for the city of Fort Worth and their impact on city and District 10? How will you balance these in concert with the issues specific to District 10?
So the top 3 issues. We all struggle with traffic day in and day out. We have a lack of road infrastructure to support, but with that we also have an imbalance. We have a lot of rooftops and not enough mixed-use commercial growth to offset our costs. Public safety, I will say, is always going to be the first and foremost that I think of. We've got to think about quality of life and public safety. That's a driving force for someone to feel comfortable to live in our district. And so part of that is to make sure that we have not only the dollars through not just our bonds, but outside of that for projects that are for our road, but for our right-of-way acquisitions, for any development coming forward. It's not just about putting rooftops or commercial development. We got to make sure that we have plans in place ahead of those developments, because once those developments start, it's harder to go back and try to have the right-of-way acquisition available so we can expand those roads. We need to also be able to be mindful about how that impacts our first responders. Our first responders need to have a soft shoulder or extra lane or safety lane to be able to get through and around. Right now we have 2 little lane areas in parts of Fort Worth in our district that do cause a huge delay in response times because of that. I've met with a lot of people who have told me that while calling 911, they are told, hang up, call Roanoke. It's going to get you faster. That's not a solution that I'm okay with. So I want to make sure those things are put into place ahead of time with a great plan. And that goes back to where are our dollars going? We need to look at that at the bigger picture. Where are our dollars going? Where can we reduce our dollar expenses in certain areas to be able to provide for long-term use in other areas, such as our road infrastructure?
East to west mobility is a real problem, and I said earlier, lack of planning. I had a conversation with Manny Ramirez years ago when he was first starting to plan the Bonds Ranch project. If you're not familiar with that area, It is an area that goes from basically Eagle Mountain Lake all the way over to 287 and then beyond. In a 3-mile stretch, you have 3 railroad crossings. And if you've ever sat on that road during traffic, it is terrible. If you're unfortunate enough that you hit a train on every single one of those things, it'll take you an hour to make a 3-mile trip. The problem was, I asked the question, I said, how long has that plan been in place? He said it wasn't. There wasn't a plan. And I said, well, how can that be? He said, well, unless somebody actually tackles it, says, hey, I'm gonna make a plan for this, I'm gonna have it happen, there's no plan. Most of the roads over there, there's no plan. You have Avondale Hazlitt. It's been funded since 16, still hadn't started. They lost the money, they got the money, they lost the money. Lack of planning is a problem, and we've got to fix that. We've got to be able to work together, Tarrant County, Fort Worth, Hazlitt, Keller, we all have to work together to make sure that happens. And that takes smart planning, and it takes people that are actually able to build relationships and make that happen. The police, and it's a problem. You have the north facility over here, it takes 30 minutes to get over to the west side. That's unacceptable in any city. And if we're growing and we're trying to attract people and we're trying to have a good sense of community, people need to be able, those resources need to be able to get to where they need to get quickly. And the tax burden. We spend too much money at the city level. There's just too much. There's too many programs that shouldn't have those resources. We need to focus on the core infrastructure. District 10 has been neglected. It's one of the largest districts. It has the largest tax base. You have Hillwood, you have BNSF, you have Alliance Airport. We need to be getting the attention and the resources that we need to make sure that we have the roads, we have the first responders that we need.
District 10 has 4 disconnected regions. Henrietta Creek Ranch HOA out on 114, Chadwick Farms HOA on the east side of 114 and the east side of 35W and south of 114. The area of 17 Lakes, which is in that same area nearby, and the area in that area around Tidwell Middle School, and then the fourth area is the area west of 287. They feel generally left out of city and county services and decisions. 2 of those areas are in Denton County. What steps can you take to better include these residents and their needs in the discussions at City Council? This one would go to, to Chris first.
Okay. Again, there's kind of a theme here, lack of planning. I think that the district as a whole has not been given the attention that it needs. I think that we need to be loud about it. We need to make sure that we're getting the resources. There's only $10.4 million in this bond package that's coming to District 10 for infrastructure. $10.4 million. That is nothing. This area needs a whole lot more planning. It needs a lot more projects, and we need to tackle it the right way.
It's a very challenging location. So we have a disconnect because of the roadway. There's a huge gap. So we need to get that funding for sure. But if you look at it from a first responder response time, you have Firehouse that is there off of Park Vista that has to go over to Independence Parkway to then go back over to 17 Lakes for Chadwick Farms and Henrietta Creek. That is a long delay. And so we do have to articulate to our TPW for project planning. I don't believe that everything needs to come from a bond. We do need to look at what dollars need to come through to have some connectivity. I've done that. I've been able to do that outside of bonds. And so I think we can push for measures that will allow projected planning and moving forward from the north-south, but also from the east-west arterials. That does go back to the conversations of having good relationships. We have on the west side, we do have a lot of partnerships with the county and the commissioners, but we also have the city of Hazlitt, which I've already engaged them and communicated. We have a good relationship, good dialogues happening. Those built relationships are exactly what will take us forward to provide those connectivity and connection points. So we have a better flowing. A flowing city is a thriving city.
Will you be accepting endorsements from Mercy Culture, For Liberty and Justice, and/or True Texas Project?
No.
No.
As a city council member, how can you hold local, and state officials accountable for providing adequate funding and support for public schools and its career technical education programs? Chris?
Say that again, please.
Sure. How as a city council member can you hold local and state officials accountable for providing adequate funding and support for public schools and the career technical education programs?
You know, we can't get involved with the city, with the school boards. What we can do is we can facilitate what is surrounding them. I think that any after school, let's try to do it again, after school specials. After school programs, any of those skilled trades, I think transportation, I think, you know, we need to make sure that the parents have the decision when it comes to schools, and we need to support them in any way we can.
I would actually say that we do have an option. We have the built relationships. It's really important for us to be able to know who our board members are at the school level. While we may not be able to dip our toe into how things are structured or decision making, but I think we do need to open up that dialogue to know who our members are of the board, because the dialogue is going to impact our residents who are our students. And so we do need to express what we as a city are hoping to achieve for the dollars that are coming in and how they will be utilized to support our students who hopefully one day will not only graduate from middle school, high school, but will come back and live here in this city as well. So we want to make sure that we have those good, proper, open dialogue and relationships built.
Electing a city council representative who is actively involved in city affairs is valued by residents. Have you participated in past elections, city elections? Have you had the opportunity to serve on any city boards, commissions, or in other roles? Now, some of you talked about that a little earlier, so it's a repeat, but please.
I serve on, as I said, I'm president of my HOA. I was appointed to a freshwater district number 2 for Tarrant County. I have had other advisory roles. I will say that, you know, some of my past voting record in primaries has not been great. As I said, about 4 or 5 years ago, things changed, and I started opening my eyes to what was happening, and I realized I needed to get involved.
I have been a very active voter. That is one thing that I can tell you. I have told my kids, I have raised them at the age of 18. They know exactly where we're going. We're going to make sure that they get registered to vote. So much so that I know my kids have told their girlfriends, their friends, hey, let's go. Let's get you registered to vote. I mean it when I say an informed voter is a great voter. We want to make sure that they're educated and they know about their candidates. Doesn't mean you have to vote like I do, but it just means please do vote. Exercise your right to vote. So I have been extremely active in the voting, because it not only means that I've been behind the North Division being built, the dollars going there for our public safety, but it's also been for our roads and our bond referendums that have happened. It's been for our first responders at every opportunity when a bond has allowed that opportunity to be on it. I have been there to support that because it matters to me, because this is my community and I don't want to see it falter. So I have definitely been behind every single time that there's been availability to vote.
Okay, this one's for Alicia first. Homelessness and panhandling are creeping north. What would your plans be to address homelessness in our city and our districts?
So it is a very multi-pronged approach that I think does not only take from the city side, from organizations, but also from the community of residents and educating them. We need to understand that it is not about being heartless to not give $1 to a person who's down on their luck. No one wants to see someone down on their luck. It's about where's that dollar going and how is it going to help them. We have a lot of dollars going through our CCPD funds that are going towards organizations that are there to help people who are in need of help. Giving that person that dollar is not accounting for how it's going to help them in the future. So if the goal is to make sure that they get off the streets and get the help they deserve, then we need to educate the community. So that would be my first goal, is to push back on the community to say, I need you to understand that we have dollars already going and we need to have accountability for that dollar that's being given to that person. So let's put them in the right path. And in doing so would be going to those organizations. But to that also, we need to be accountable to those organizations. How are they going to be addressing? We also don't want to give dollars to organizations that are not going to have accountability if they're going in. So we do also need to take a look at that too, because those are dollars that we're putting into as well as residents.
In addition to those, I mean, I think that it's a safety concern. We need to make sure that we protect the community, and we need to keep the area safe.
You both state in your bios that you are small business owners. Please talk about the business or businesses you own, the length of ownership, and how your experience as a business owner will help you as a council member.
Okay. You heard me talk about my business. I'm a career business owner, 30 years. I have had, we've employed hundreds of people. We have provided services for tens of thousands of people, and a lot of which are in District 10. As I said, right now we operate 3 businesses, construction, property maintenance, and manufacturing. So a wide gamut of businesses. You know, a business owner's responsibility is vision and watching the numbers, focusing on dollars and cents. You know, Kerry Moon back there, he did a real good job when he was in the position. He went right into the finances of it, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Is we've got to make sure that the money that is coming into this, you know, right now we have a budget shortfall. There's 2 sides of a budget. There's the income and there's the expense. If we're spending too much money, we need to stop spending. We don't need to be focused on the income. We need to be focused on the, you know, both are important, but right now we need to be focused on where the dollars are going.
Business owner, 25 years, real estate holdings. I have investments in different businesses, laundromat services as well. So that has been my background. I did that partially over the course of 25 years, and then most recently, just adjacent from my time at City Hall working as a district director.
Builders and developers have complained that residential organizations have too much influence in the zoning decisions. How would you characterize the residential organization's input and where it comes and how it helps with responsible growth and includes, in your answer, include categories like economic development, community safety, multifamily, quality neighborhoods? Those are the things that we look at when we're looking at development up here. And how do you look at those?
Sure, absolutely. I will say from experience, when we had the development that I talked about earlier, it is about community input. We need to be mindful of encroachment on neighborhood communities. And I will say that because we had that when I was in District 4 as a district director. Every single time a development was coming through, we made sure we had communication with our neighborhood leaders. We wanted input. That's very vital to our growth as a residents. It's for, we're not talking about a NIMBY mentality, like I mentioned before. We want to be cognizant of what's already established and the development coming in. So as we plan for future, we have a comprehensive plan coming out right now, 2050. We want to have the community buy-in. We also want to have the real estate buy-in, because it's also important for us to open up our ears to what exactly is coming and who's coming and how to attract people to come to Fort Worth in a developmental, smart growth way. So when we look at the dollars that are coming here, we look at the communities that are built. We need to hear the voice of the community. You came here, you put your investment of your life here. We need to hear your responses and take that weight, because that is extremely important. The voice of the community is what I want to bring forward. It is not top bottom. I want your voice to come forward at the dais level.
Alicia, while many neighborhoods have nice trails on which to walk our dogs, despite several requests in several different forums for a dog park, none have been forthcoming. What can we do to get a dog park in our area?
Do we know what area?
Well,
Just in general?
do we know what area?
It's a big dog park.
Go ahead.
I'll just. Okay. Just want to make sure. Okay. I appreciate the question. So, as a city, we are looking at open spaces. And one of the things that is beneficial to that is obviously the greenery that is retained within the city of Fort Worth and the plentitude of options that come with it. So I think as we look at utilizing that program moving forward over the next year, since it is fairly new, I would say that we start to have the dialogue of how those open spaces look like and what actually could become of the use of it. So it could be a dog park, it could be a walking trail, it could be a garden setup. The community would need to, I think, have some input in that, because I think green space is great, but we also want to have locations for people to go to and maybe just enjoy an afternoon day on a nice Saturday, right? And so sometimes that includes going outings with your family and your kids. You want to have a picnic, or you want to take your other kids, your canine kids, to the park. So those are, I think, options that are very open to the concept of the open spaces.
I think we need to understand what the community wants. What's going to get the best return on the investment? What's going to get the most use, and what's going to be in the most beneficial to these communities?
Some voters have significant concerns regarding immigrant detention facilities and high consumption AI data centers in the city and our district. Moral implications aside, these developments pose threats to our infrastructure, potentially exhausting our water and power supplies, which would drive up the cost for residents. What are your specific views towards these high impact projects and their impact on prioritizing resource sustainability? That would be Chris first.
I think that the reality with the data centers is a hot topic, and there's a whole lot of information that we don't know. They're too new to really understand what's the impact going to be on power, what's the impact going to be on water. We've got a situation where there's one that City Council is evaluating right now, and they're unable to make that decision. They were supposed to vote on it today, they pushed it down the road, and I think that there's just too many unknowns. I think any time that you have any kind of industrial space or anything like that, you need to take into account what the impact is on the community. You need to make sure that there's buffers so that it's not a situation like an auto service place that try to get built right behind a neighborhood. There needs to be buffers, there needs to be separation from that. But again, we need a whole lot more information before anybody can really make a decision on that. What was the other part of the question? You talked about data centers and
Immigrant detention facilities, which would be another big use of space and of resources.
Right. I mean, that's another hot topic. I think that, I support that, if illegal immigrants should not be here. There's a whole lot of conversations about what needs to happen with that. And I think that we're still trying to figure out the exact way to do it. But I support that, that we have laws and we need to follow those laws.
So to answer the question about the pull on the draw of the community, so correct, today was a very intense conversation with a zoning case regarding the data center. Definitely a lot more information needs to be provided, but I would say that the developer today did have some very interesting key points that I think is something to look at. We don't want to steer away from development coming in. That's loss of dollars. So we need to be mindful of how we do that. It's just like multifamily. We don't want the encroaching into our neighborhoods, but we could put them in areas for mixed-use developments. It works there. So how do we work with the city and the developers that are good neighbored businesses that would drive dollars to our city and find locations that do serve without having, as Edge shows, would not be an impact. They would put their dollars in and they would not be utilizing or straining our water infrastructure. They would be providing it themselves.
We have heard from the current governor and at least one of our local state representatives that they wish to eliminate property taxes. The city of Fort Worth is expecting to receive $822 million in property taxes for fiscal year 2026 to fund both the general fund and the general debt service fund. What is your position on property taxes and the role property taxes will have to fund our city going forward?
So I'd like to better understand what's that really going to look like, because we need to have property taxes in order to fund our general fund and to live off of. So do we need to be mindful of the tax rate? Absolutely. We don't need to be spending it wildly, but we do need to understand what is that going to look like and how is that going to impact me in the long run. So I would be willing to have a better understanding first before we make such a big push to eliminate it completely.
I mean, I think we've talked about it a lot. We need to make sure that the money that we're bringing in is spent the way it needs to be, and if we don't need to spend it, we don't need to spend it. I think that there's a lot of conversations that are happening about property taxes. We're talking about school taxes being eliminated. We're talking about how we keep taxes down. We talk about affordability and affordable housing. Well, if our taxes are lower and we're getting the services that we need, taxes are lower. That's it.
Chris, what regulations would you like to see aimed at development or developers to better suit responsible growth in what remains of the open spaces in Fort Worth and the ETJ?
I think that it's, if we're working together and we actually have a plan, we need to be able to protect the green spaces, we need to be able to plan for the roads, and we need to be able to have all those things be congruent and work together. Right now, we don't have that. I think that Maddie Parker has spent a lot trying to preserve the parks, and I think she's doing a good job. I think that if we're partnering the right way and we're communicating with these developers, we're going to have a better community as we go forward.
So one of the experiences that I had with a development that was not in our district at the time was the ease of paying a fine when tree surveys were being done. There was a clearing out of established trees, and all that the developer had to do was pay a fine. I don't think that that's an appropriate way of doing business. So I would like to have more strict rules and just not give them a slap on the hand. I do think we need to work in unison to what kind of expectations, and I will say this, as a resident right now, we are having a lot of issues with our established trees. I'm not sure how many of you are dealing with some trees that are uprooting some sidewalks, or you have neighbors that are. That's put in by the developer. We need to kind of have a better conversation about what trees are put in so that we don't have that burden our homeowners 10, 15 years down the line. Because as we all know, sidewalks are our responsibilities. So if that tree goes and you're in an HOA, guess what? You have to replace it. That's money out of your pocket, plus also the time and effort that you're going to have to find someone to go ahead and make sure that that sidewalk piece is going to have to go through the city regulations, city approvals. There's a lot more than just getting it done. So that is not fair to our residents. So I would like to make sure that we don't have those kind of impacts with any kind of development going forward.
One of the issues that we have had with developers coming into what we call multi-use, MU zoning areas, is that in MU they're allowed to build apartments, but they never seem to come along with the idea of putting any retail in. How do we convince, what do we do to convince the developers to actually develop multi-use?
So I would say that we go back to the concept of development as a whole, as a city, and we need to re-engage the thought process of where we have these developments and how. And currently our comprehensive plan, I'll go back to that, is established to 2030, but we need to look beyond that with the growth on the west side. There's a lot of open space that we have undeveloped, and future growth needs to have a positive impact to the community, and that is driving dollars, because they can only do so much within density, because people aren't going to want to have multifamily behind their yard, so they're not going to buy a house there. So we have to sell it and tell them what people want. And that goes back to the earlier question about the real estate, and the regulations, and having those conversations at the table to say, what is it that you're having people ask you about when they're coming to you as a realtor? What are they looking for? If you look at the younger generations, they're not looking for the big homes anymore. They're looking for smaller footprints, but walkability. That's the new drive. And so we need to market our communities like that, because we have restaurants, we have the job centers nearby where there doesn't need to be a vehicle. That's also an attraction as well. We don't have to have more cars on the road if we have a way to have that smart growth. And they'll see the benefit of it.
Yeah, I think planning. I think that we need to be able to designate areas that are mixed use. There's some great facility or developments in Plano. They've done a very good job of having mixed use. They've able to have some businesses and some retail and restaurants there, and it adds to it. I think that Heritage the shops at Heritage is really good. I think that the west side needs more. There needs more planning, but we need to make sure that we have the roads that can support that, because we don't have it right now.
Can you talk about your experience either working with departments at City Hall or and knowing how to get things done as a business owner, or as some of your other experience?
The unfortunate thing about, so the departments that I deal with the most is planning and zoning. And anybody that's tried to do something with planning and zoning in Fort Worth knows it's difficult. And it is, I don't know, difficult's not even a strong enough word. We can do a whole lot better. And that's one of the things that I really want to focus on. 30 years of it, there's some things that work and there's a lot of things that don't. And unfortunately, a lot of times to get things moving, you have to be somebody that's well known and has the ability to pick up the phone and say, hey, let's get this going. Some of these projects take way too long. And if we're trying to be a great partner and we're trying to attract businesses and trying to attract families, we need to be able to have responsible growth, but there needs to be a clear process for how that happens. And it doesn't need to be kicked around, and we don't need to have this mentality that, oh, it doesn't fit into this core box, we're gonna deny it, send it back, and that's what happens.
So speaking from experience, having had the calls or having to work with different departments, are there pains? Yes, but it is a lot about the relationships and the dialogue and how we can get that across to the finish line. People would call our office, they would present their issues, whether it was a developer, someone asking for a permit. We would respond. We would find it. We would drill down to the very nitty gritty of who it was that was overseeing that, and we would take care of it, because that's the kind of office I want to build, is responsiveness and an effectiveness. And so it goes back to your leadership, is that how and who and the experiences is critical to the measure of knowing how to be most effective and most impactful. So whether it's someone down the street who calls me and says that the water mains, got an issue, or we've got a developer who's telling me that, and it's happened, I've literally walked down to the office and said, why is this still sitting on your desk? It's been here a week. Let's get them moving to the next one. And for as long as it takes, we had a charter school that was built in 9 months, probably the fastest project, because it got pushed so much from our office, because we don't let things sit idly. We know things can move faster, and we did. We absolutely, every step of the way, did.
There is zero regulation of HOA management companies in Texas, unlike many other states like Virginia, Nevada, and Connecticut. Would you support, or more importantly, advocate for legislation to establish regulatory authority to these entities in Texas?
So if I'm interpreting the question correctly, I'm trying to understand, is it to give the HOA or the HOA staff the regulation?
Regulate the management companies.
Okay.
Regulation of property management companies.
So I am not about government overreach. So I would like to say that if a community is not happy with that HOA, they can select another one. And so I think that that's part of the conversation that needs to be had, is what exactly are they looking for? What is that community looking to achieve? And who's the right fit for them? Just like any other, lawn care service, lifeguard service, they need to bid it out. And once they bid that out, then they'll go ahead and find the right fit for them.
That's a tough question, because here's the problem. As a lot of the bylaws for HOAs, when they're developed, they have a management company baked in, and in order to get rid of them or change that, you need a quorum. Anybody in an HOA been successful and get a quorum without a whole lot of effort? It doesn't happen. And so I think that there's a lot that needs to be, I'm not a fan of a whole lot of regulation and a whole lot of bureaucracy. I think that there's a lot that we can do better with these HOAs, and I think it requires a whole lot different and a lot bigger conversation as to the way that they were set up. I can tell you it took us 3 years to try to just update our bylaws. It took us 3 years to get enough people, and that was in a relatively small HOA. And I can't imagine an HOA this size. But I think that, if you look at a district as, and the district, the councilman is basically the mayor of that district, right? Each one of these HOAs, these large HOAs, is basically a little city. And we need to be able to empower them to run those and be able to have the communication and work together to where they make their community as good as possible. If a management company isn't doing a good job, I agree, we should not, they should have the ability to change that, but it shouldn't be jumping through hoops to do it. It should be what's best for the community.
Are you aware that the city planning and zoning department is making decisions that are clearly a violation of city regulations, i.e. authorizing businesses to begin construction before committee and council approval?
Unfortunately, yes, I am aware. It is an unfortunate circumstance that has taken place that needs to be corrected, and we need to make sure that our, not only staff, but department head takes that measure or step so that it doesn't happen again. Unfortunately, we have seen it recently where it has impacted a neighborhood that had to go through several iterations of conversations, and that led back to City Hall. They were successful in that, but I do believe that there is a definite need to revamp the way that is handled.
The city is looking to hire a chief planning officer. The chief planning officer will oversee the carrying out of the new comprehensive plan, the new Moving a Million plan, and the Project Zero, which is to reduce accidents. What do you think we should be looking for in that position? And do you think that's a good thing for us to do, or should we continue along the lines that we have been and allow the different city managers, assistant city managers, to get their departments to go in concert with the plans?
I don't think we need to be adding more positions in the city level. I think that we have a very capable city manager in Jay Chapa. I think that if you continue to create jobs and you create more silos, I think that it's going to negatively impact this city. And I think that we need to get smarter about the way we do things, and we need to lead. The city needs to lead. It's for we're special. We need to keep it that way. And we don't throwing another job role in there and another salary, that doesn't make any sense.
I think this is where we'll definitely differ. So normally I would say that I wouldn't want to add another position, but at the pace that we're growing as a city, we're going to be adding a lot more people over the next few years. We need to have somebody that's going to have a better focus on the plans ahead of them coming. And so I do believe that we need to have somebody that understands the planning, the zoning, and the transportation structure, so that way that's their main focus. Because if we continue to multitask our current staff, we're going to get what we have right now, and that's been a mess. And so we need to, it's not ideal to add another level, but because we are going to be growing 400,000 people over the next 30 years, we need to have that plan in place, and that focus needs to start today.
What is your stance and your approach in balancing the needs of the residents versus big business coming into the city? It seems the big businesses get all they want, and the residents get the aftermath of it.
So I'll go back to what I said earlier. It is about public safety and quality of life. Does it meet those two? Then let's continue that dialogue further. We want to have the right kind of development coming in, but we don't want it at the demise of our communities and our neighborhoods. We can't afford that. It just makes our community look less of a neighborhood, and we're fighting against bigger, data centers that are popping up. We need to have a better control. So the dialogue needs to go back to public safety and quality of life.
Yeah, it's conversations. I think that we need to, there's a place for a lot of these things in this city. Right now, there's an imbalance with homeowner taxes versus business taxes. We need to be able to attract the businesses that we want. Hospitals, medical centers, retail. I think that you've got a great partner in Hillwood. They've done a good job of contributing to the city. $149 billion in economic impact in the last 20 years. I think that a lot of that stuff has been handled right, but as we continue to plan and actually have a plan for the growth of District 10, things will go where they need to go.
One of the areas that the legislators have been, I was going to call them something else, have been talking about in Austin is taking away the rights of cities and school districts to lobby for laws that would, for or against laws that would be beneficial to their residents. How do we keep the dialogue going if they're going to take that, if they're going to take away our ability to lobby? Chris?
Break that question down a little bit.
Right now, in the last session, Gio Capriglione was introducing legislation that would prevent the cities from, and the school districts from lobbying for issues that are pertinent to their areas of responsibility. In other words, take away the ability for the city and the school districts to go down and tell the legislatures the impact of the legislation that they are considering. How do we make sure that doesn't happen? Or if it does happen, what do we do?
I'm not sure how to answer that question. I'm not sure.
It's who we vote in. Who's going to be our representative? So we need to be very educated voters, and we need to continue to be mindful of who's stepping into the races, getting information as who's going to be our representation, and carry that forward. But we need to have also community voice together cohesively to champion that voice, no matter whether it is taken away or it's not. We need to do it at the ballot box, and we also need to do it from our home local community level. And we need to hold those that are in position accountable for that purpose. Our voice should not be squandered. We have a right to speak. Our dollars are going there. They are there to represent us. We need to make sure that we are there to hold them accountable at every turn.
That's all the questions I have developed. Does anybody have anything that they're... Amanda?
Hi. Let me pull my question up here.
Just one question though, Amanda.
Yeah, let's see. Now on notes. So I believe your treasurer, Chris, is Mr. Clegg. So Clegg is an executive at Westwood, correct? Westwood is responsible for a lot of development and infrastructure in District 10 specifically. And he also regularly attends meetings where he's representing the developers. So how will you handle zoning and development votes where Westwood or its clients have a stake? And do you find your relationship to be perhaps perceived as a conflict of interest with Clay?
Absolutely not. I mean, at the end of the day, anybody that's willing to work together to make Fort Worth better, that's what we're going to do. Travis Clegg does have a lot of involvement in Westwood, but he also is very mindful of the city. He wants smart growth. He doesn't want it to be dominated by business, and that's not the person he is. I'm not either. I think that there's, in any of these situations, a lot of times people look at it as an either or. I think there's an and. I think that there is a place for all of it here, and we need to make sure that we have smart growth, we have smart business, the businesses that we need here. We have, we make sure and we protect the single family homes. There is a little bit of an imbalance on multifamily right now. We need to protect that. We need to protect the single family homes and grow smartly.
Well, thank you, candidates. Thank you very much for the time you spend with us tonight.
Sorry, I just had one quick question. We had heard some of Chris Jameson's endorsements, but I hadn't heard it from these.
So let me go ahead and just wrap it up. I know that Chris had mentioned some endorsements. I will say that I did get the call from Fire as well on Friday. I was a very close candidate from what I understand. The only difference was there was an alignment to the POA with the consulting company, and so that's what garnered that. But to that, I do have other council members currently on City of Fort Worth that will be endorsing me, that will be coming out soon, as well as neighboring city council members and a lot of community members. But I will tell you that the biggest and most important endorsement is you, the community. That's the one that's the most important to me at the end of the day, because that's who I'm going to be serving, is the community. So your endorsement is the biggest one that I'm working hard to achieve, and I hope that I earn that.
There's 131 or $4 million in the TPW Proposition A that is for the Bonds Ranch project. This is a project that stretches from Eagle Mountain Lake all the way to Route Business 280 actual 287, Superhighway 287. There are two separated grade crossings involved in that, for which, in other words, they're either going to go under or over the tracks so that the trains don't stop us anymore.
Over the tracks. They're going over the tracks.
Is the one on Business 287 going over?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
They're moving, so there's a Union Pacific rail line, and there's a BNSF rail line. They're going to move the BNSF rail line right next to the UP, which eliminates the impedance of the airport so that they can do the bridge over.
Last time I talked to the guys, they hadn't told me what was the final on that, but thank you very much. So we've got two separated grade crossings. Those things cost around $60 to $80 million, okay? Because of the length that they have to go and the height and so forth and so on. This will give us an east to west thoroughfare for traffic that includes emergency traffic, it includes safety traffic, it includes commuters going to and from work, it includes a whole new set of developments that are going on at the far east, western end of Bonds Ranch. This thing is being coordinated through the county, but it includes money from the county for the design, money from the Central Texas Council of Governments for the some of the construction pieces and for the separated grade crossings. There's money from TxDOT. There's money from the city of Fort Worth. This thing is vital to the far north commerce and quality of life. I can't stress how much we need that. It has been a dream of mine, but we needed somebody to come together, bring all those agencies together, and Manny and his folks did that. Okay, there's no doubt about who got this thing going to a reality. It's Manny and Dylan, his person Dylan Maroney, browbeating all of those different organizations I just talked about. Without that support, we may never see that happen, and all we'll have is plugged roads. Yes, we didn't get as much in that bond program specifically for 10 as we've gotten in the past, but I will tell you that we have gotten north of the loop up here, in fact north of North Tarrant Parkway, we have gotten at least a third and sometimes more of the bond program each year since 2008 to build roads. Are we done? Absolutely not. Okay, and I will tell you that, is he still here? Yes, he is. Councilman Crane came up with an idea, having watched the catch-up that we're doing here, with creating a way to get that funding as the growth happens. We didn't have that up here. And so we still have, but we didn't have that advantage, okay? So we've got to get out there and vote for these things if we're going to have a city, and I mean a city, not just a region, but a city that is thriving. Businesses and people come here because we have what nobody else has, and that's the smallest big city in the country. I would honestly challenge you to find another city of 1 million people that can get two candidates for city council to come out on any given night and chat about what their feelings are. We have access to the mayor, we have access to the council, we have access to senior and junior staff. You won't find that everywhere, but we can't do that without supporting them, and they can't do it without us giving them the money to do it. We can't tell them we want traffic lights and not give them the money to build the traffic lights. Traffic lights have gone up from something like $800,000 for a regular two-way crossing to over $1 million. For a light? No. The decision on roundabouts is all about traffic numbers. It's about traffic numbers, not so much the expense of the apparatus. But you've got the prices are just absolutely astronomical, and they continue to be. So we have to keep that in mind when we look at $850,000. I can remember when one of the bond proposals was less than 300. You know, so that's how old I am. So be informed. There's $185 million in there for parks. That's divided up between parks and community centers and other needs for the city. I will tell you this, that we finally got our community center, the first community center built north of the Loop. That's at Betsy Price. I ask you to go over there and look at it. It is fabulous. They have done a great job, and now it's filled. All of their programs are full. Their their after-school programs are coordinated with the schools, where the buses bring the kids over to the community center, and they have opportunities that we never had before. So if you think a community center is a luxury, I'll tell you something, it's probably not anymore. It's a gathering place. It's a place where we can put seniors together to have a program, where we can have youth together to have a program, to get them off of their gosh darn video games and get them to talk to one another or play pickleball or whatever the heck they do, even if they just sit around and chat. So that $185 million sounds like a big number, and it is. But on the other hand, when people move here to be with the businesses, and when businesses look at what we've got here, they want to know that the people they're hiring will have recreation, will have a place that is more than just a place to build a house. So take a look at these things. The library one this year is, being on the library committee, I have to tell you that I'm on the library advisory committee, so I might be a little biased. But the money that is going into the libraries this year will help rebuild a couple of libraries that are really hurting infrastructure-wise. They're in different parts of the city. They are not in District 10 and 4. So those buildings need to be rehabbed so that they're safe for people to work in. The projects that are in this bond issue were not thought of lightly. Some of them you might think are nice to have, but on the other hand, when you take a step back and look behind the curtain, they are what makes the backbone of a city. So consider them in your own time and vote the best you can, but please, 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 whatever you do, vote for Proposition A with the TPW. The code changes to city code. One includes an increase to $50,000 for the annual salary of a council person and $60,000 a year for the mayor. Our mayor, for the first time, had to take a second job because the mayor's salary is so low here. Will $60,000 a year give us a full-time mayor? Probably not, but it'll help in certain regards. $50,000 for a full-time job for a council person? Probably not a full, but it will help subsidize whatever they have to give up from the jobs that they have in order to represent us, and we have a better selection of people who want to run for office. This is a great city. The city is made up of a whole bunch of people, and these people have worked together very, very hard to keep our quality of life, and you need to be aware of what you can do, because we got a lot of places to go. The guy from FedEx, when he first started looking at things, said, don't let best get in the way of better. And that's what we keep doing, is looking at better. And these folks are running to make it better. Thank you.